Hey, folks, welcome to Affiliate Nerd Out. I am your nerderator, Dustin House, spreading that good word about affiliate marketing. You're going to find me here every Thursday at noon, interviewing a guest in the affiliate realm. My guest today, Will Gallahue, an old friend of mine from back in the day at a coupon sites. Will, welcome to the Nerdatorium.
And Dustin, thank you so much for having me, man. This is so great to be able to be in the same virtual room again. Take me back to the days of the office in West Austin back in 2012, man.
That's right. Yeah, it's been a journey, maybe 12 years ago at this point, where we were sharing an office and slinging coupons and trademark bidding and getting our feet wet in this industry. And you're always a character and fun to talk to. And we've just stayed in touch for a long time, not necessarily overlapping with any partnerships. It's always good to see an old friend.
Absolutely. Same here, man.
Let's start with tell us who you are and what you're doing out there.
Hey, yeah, I've been in the online marketing space now for about 20 years. And most recently, I've been working as the product lead for a tool called RankBeat, which essentially is a way that brands can get an understanding of their visibility, their strengths and their weaknesses in terms of how LLMs perceive their brand, and be able to develop action items and things that they can do to just overall improve their presence online and in LLMs.
Okay, great. And what's your role there? Are you managing the affiliate program? How are you rolling?
Sure. So one of the things that I'm doing, I'm just the overall product lead, but as part of it, I also do a lot of our just kind of overall research. And part of that kind of research process has been looking at the affiliate space, specifically in the realm of how is LLMs, how are things like ChatGPT going to change kind of affiliates, how they just present themselves, how brands leverage them. And what I've got today is some really interesting pieces for both sides that I think are going to be really valuable for the audience.
Outstanding. AI is, in my mind, it's the new search engine. It's what I'm using when I'm interested in something. And it's who I'm asking and prompting for answers that I want for anything in the world at this point. And I feel like the majority of the world is starting to head that way. So let's start off small. AI most commonly used is by ChatGPT. Is that correct?
Correct. It's got about 70% of the market share among all of the different sort of AI search engines that are currently available.
Yeah, most popular. There are new AI that is coming out every day and trying to capture that piece of the market share. But overall, I think the vast majority of people are still using Google, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at if you take all of these searches that are being done, both searches in Google, searches on ChatGPT, and you add all of them up, ChatGPT represents about 4% of the market with kind
Okay.
of the other AI engines another, let's say half to three quarters of a percent. So really what you're talking about is about 1/20th of the market right now. But that's 1/20th of the market that didn't exist just a few years ago, even maybe 6 months ago. So in terms of what we're seeing is that the number of people that are starting to use ChatGPT as their main sort of homepage search is actually starting to kind of really rise and take hold. And it's really for a number of reasons. It doesn't have, at least for right now, you don't have these giant blocks of ads. You have a very filtered, curated search experience. So it's something that people really love and enjoy and really get a lot of use out of. And I think that it's something that we're going to continue to see more and more people shift to it as their just preferred way of finding content.
I totally agree. Can you take a step back and tell us what a LLM is?
Sure. So it's a large language model. It's essentially just a big, think of it as just a big, just collection of all the world's data. And essentially what you're doing is querying that data and kind of a service like ChatGPT essentially looks at it and says, okay, looking at everything that's in this gigantic ecosystem, how, when somebody's querying about something, what can I do to output an answer and leverage all of this data to essentially be able to build smart kind of answers and responses to user queries. And there's a lot that goes on in terms of how these answers get generated, how they're just built. It's a really cool technology and something that has so many different uses in so many different spaces. ChatGPT is just really the tip of the iceberg of how we can start to leverage this technology.
Absolutely. I personally use Claude a lot for my ideation in content writing and creations and scripting even, sometimes even like filling in words and capturing my voice into content that if I'm having a bad think day, I really lean on it. ChatGPT I use for my generic searches on the internet for information that I'm missing. But you mentioned ChatGPT has a big market share at 70%, but only 4% of people are using an LLM for searches rather than Google. But it's growing very fast and furious. And so the topic of today is kind of learning I've been super curious about how people are ranking on the results for ChatGPT when I search it in. And we're going to be talking about how you rank for that today, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, awesome. That is great to hear because this is super interesting to me and a lot of folks out there. Let's talk about the starting point. Where do you want to start here in this framework that you guys have been researching?
Sure. So I think we can start on the brands because brands, we can talk through just how they, how ChatGPT decides what brands to show when somebody's looking for a product or service. And then we can talk through how affiliates can impact those results and then how affiliates can write better content so that they start to be surfaced in the results as well.
Okay, great. Right now, brands are winning on Google. Affiliates are getting punished and pummeled right now out there. Is it the same in ChatGPT? Are they favoring brands in the way that they are on Google?
So it's really interesting. It actually comes down to what's out there in kind of the training data ecosystem. So when you
Okay.
ask about kind of large language models, what we find is that in some areas, a lot of what in Google carries over into the LLM space. Specifically, if you have an OEM, if you're got, let's say, a big product market like smartphones, Apple and Samsung will dominate the results. Whereas if you have a market where it's maybe a little bit more content dependent, where it's maybe businesses that do relationship based selling. For instance, I just published some research on just the IT space where traditionally in big IT sales, you don't have people writing a ton of content. It's just you've got 10 or 15 people on an account. They constantly meet with the client, they're constantly building relationships, but they're not generating content. So LLMs aren't necessarily picking up anything, and it gives opportunities for small brands that are scrappy and
Mhm.
putting together really good content to actually just outrate, to not only outrank, but absolutely dominate their spaces in some cases. We found an example, for instance, where for a specific region for IT services, you had small 50-person companies outranking 500,000-person companies, and it wasn't even close. It was like 80 or 90% visibility for searches in their realm. Whereas these big players that are these gigantic top five, 200 to 700,000 employee firms, were at maybe 15, 20%, if they were even above 10% at all. So there's definitely opportunities. It's just really about being smart about how you position your content and how you write and how you build a strategy around it.
Okay, great. What is that strategy? What should we be doing as brands or affiliates to start ranking on these LLMs?
Absolutely. So if you're a brand, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get an understanding and kind of a benchmark of where you are. A tool like ours, or there's others within the market as well, can essentially give you a piece of that to say, okay, looking at your lines of business, how often does your brand come up? How often do your competitors come up? And then what are your kind of overall strengths and weaknesses in terms of how LLMs perceive your brand and
Mm,
kind of all the aspects around it? And what brands can do specifically around the affiliate space is really take a look at if ChatGPT says that your brand is weak, whether it's pointing out that maybe you have a warranty policy that isn't as good as your competitors, or maybe it's questions about the durability or craftsmanship of a product, or maybe even pricing. That essentially what you can do as a brand, if you leverage, again, a tool like ours or any others that are on the market, is that you can essentially say, okay, these are my weak points. How can I get an affiliate? How can I get my affiliates to start talking about these weak points as strengths? How can I say, okay, if ChatGPT has taken in some review content that says that our product is poorly made, how can I go out to my affiliate kind of network and say, I want you to write articles talking about actually the fact that our product is really well made, that talk about the construction, talk about the stitching quality, talk about different aspects to where I can start to look at the weaknesses that an LLM perceives in my brand and actually start to flip those around to where I'm leveraging my network to build a strong campaign to really highlight, let's say, key areas of weakness and turn those into strengths that would then allow me to show up far more frequently when people are looking for products or services in my space.
okay, gotcha. And does your tool actually help with the keyword concentration on what they should be ranking or building content around so that they rank for those keywords?
Yeah. So the difference between traditional SEO and search in Google and what in an LLM is that LLMs use attributes and context to really decide what to show. Whereas with Google, it's much more that keyword basis of, okay, if Google says that these are the 25 terms people search, I need to build pages that talk about these terms and have a sitemap of, okay, a page about this term, page about that term, link between them, the traditional sort of SEO content strategy. Whereas what LLMs use is attributes. So they're not looking for necessarily specific keywords. What they're essentially saying is from a top down approach, if you're asking an LLM, what's the best smartphone to buy? Essentially what they would say is, okay, what are all the things that people might consider when they're looking at a phone? They might look at cameras, they might look at battery life, storage space, AI photo editing, app ecosystems. And essentially what they'll do is they'll say, okay, we've got this giant checklist of factors. And within those, there's sub factors. There's the type of battery, there might be type of photo editing software, there might be zooms for the camera, lenses, low light settings, all these different things that essentially AI builds a scorecard around to say, okay, if I'm going to try and tell, if somebody's asking me for the best phone, I want to return results that say this is the best product. What are all of the attributes that somebody needs to hit to be able to satisfy that? And that's how they essentially kind of grade and decide what to show, as opposed to more just traditional keywords and SEO tactics around that level. It's literally about what are the best in class product attributes that we would want to highlight, and then which brands satisfy those best in class attributes that make sense to display.
Okay. So how do you identify what attributes to be going after rather than keywords?
Sure. So our tool can certainly help with that. There's also, if you want to even just have a very, let's say, simplistic view of it, you could even just go in and type into ChatGPT something along the lines of, what are the top factors customers might look for when they're buying a phone or a SaaS product or a bike or a car? And essentially what you'll be able to get is you'll start to get a little bit of that piece to where it'll say, okay, if it's, let's say, a family car, you're going to be looking at storage space. You're going to be looking at maybe if there's built-in plugs for iPads or devices or holders for things. You're going to be looking at, you're essentially going to start to get those attributes. And what you can do as an affiliate is you can turn that around and you can say, okay, if I've been writing review content about, let's say, phones or about, I don't know, backpacks or kayaks, canoes, whatever it is it might be, you can essentially say, okay, if ChatGPT says these are the things that people are focusing on, these are the things that are important that they would want to see in a best in class product to be able to surface a result. How can I then take a look at my existing content and say, you know what, I wrote this review, but I didn't talk about the phone camera. I didn't talk about the product's durability. How can I go back and actually make very specific granular changes to my content that'll improve its likelihood to not only be cited in ChatGPT, but also put up as a source for, hey, if you want a review on this, go to dustinsreviewblog.com.
Okay, gotcha. I've never gone through that concept of actually asking ChatGPT, how do I rank for this kind of keyword? Is that a good practice? Will they give you results that are acceptable or helpful?
So right now, they don't really return much of an answer.
Okay.
That's one of our core product features. But again, there's also a number of other people in the space as well that can do the same. But
Okay.
certainly if you have a brand and you're just trying to understand if somebody puts in anything about my product or service space, do I come up? Yeah, we can certainly help you answer that question.
Okay, gotcha. And as far as the brand goes, the brand can tell everybody in the world how cool they are and what their greatest features are, but all of it really doesn't mean a whole lot coming from that brand itself touting themselves. And that's the power of affiliate marketing, is having those first-hand reviews and explaining to other people that they use this product and this is why they like it. So how are you guys leveraging affiliates out there to help promote your brand in the right light?
Sure. Affiliate, it hasn't been a channel that we've engaged with yet, but it's certainly because we're just a nascent entity. It's something that we'll absolutely be looking at. But we would certainly have kind of a very similar playbook to what I just described of, okay, how does ChatGPT or these LLMs, how do they view our service? what are the attributes that they would say, okay, this is the best in class service for what you do? It would need to have these requirements. It would need to be able to do these things, essentially be able to take that and then go and not only build content on our own site, but then go to our network and say, we want you to talk about these 7 or 8 specific attributes. And maybe we'll do a campaign there where certain sites where it makes sense to talk about one, we'll have a campaign. Certain sites where it would maybe talk about another, we'll have another campaign. But really just strategically making sure that we're going out there and really having content that talks about the best things of our brand and it's done within our network.
Okay, gotcha. And with that, I could imagine affiliate managers being able to use your tool to help engage with affiliates themselves and help them curate content that they essentially will rank for either on Google or these LLMs. Is that a great use case for your guys' product?
Absolutely. Because essentially what you can do is you can essentially say, and this is, I'll get into a real world example. So we had a major phone manufacturer come to us and they said, we want to know when people are looking in ChatGPT and they're putting in questions about our device and our product specs and is our device good? Is it bad? How's the quality of this? How's the quality of that? We want to know who actually comes up, who's actually informing ChatGPT's conclusions. And what we found and where this would go from an affiliate perspective is that when it came to sites, there were essentially manufacturer's own site accounted for about, let's say, 20% of the number of citations. The 80%, though, that's where things get interesting because you have this kind of a big mix of domains because this is a global brand that you have, let's say, major kind of product review sites, you've got kind of major newspapers, but then you've got a ton of sites that are, let's say, hobbyists that are writing these really great pieces about the phone's camera and they're doing these great comparisons of here's 3 shots that I took at low light, here's 3 shots that I took on the previous version, here's the before and after, here's these great comparison sites that you may not even know are out there that exist that maybe haven't been on your radar previously. But the content that they're writing is done so well that ChatGPT and others feel like, okay, if we're going to talk intelligently about a product feature, this is a site that we want to make sure that we're referencing. And that's where you as an affiliate manager can say, okay, it looks like for my particular brand or this particular market, it pulls in, let's say 50 or 60 key domains that it really likes the content on these specific sites. And you can say, okay, out of those domains, which are the ones that make sense to contact? Which are the ones that we're not maybe working with that maybe aren't even on our radar that we can say, okay, this site accounts for 5% of the citations in this product or service space, and nobody's even maybe even doing any affiliate on it. How can we reach out to them and really kind of latch on to the momentum that they have from the quality of their content and
Right.
really have an engaging and interesting partnership?
Okay, great. Super smart. And I could absolutely see utilizing this kind of tool for affiliate management standpoint to help identify and list the kinds of partners that you want to associate with and get in contact with. So that is great. I'm going to take a minute to thank our sponsor here, and our sponsor of the day is Moonpool. If you are into getting traffic for your affiliate program and you want to credit your affiliates more for the traffic they're driving, Moonpool is that Swiss Army knife that is helping affiliate marketing intelligence and helping you get more credit for your program. Super powerful platform ensuring partners get their fair share while maximizing their revenue and your company's revenue. So Moonpool automatically audits links, identifies tracking problems, and provides real-time monitoring across your entire affiliate ecosystem. This is used by major networks like AWin and gives publishers, brands, agencies a complete visibility into their tracking performance. So stop losing money on broken links. Use Moonpool. Go to dustinhouse.com/Moonpool and go learn some more about that. All right. And backing into this structure of what you guys are utilizing your tool to go and help out the affiliates. Do you have any great tips for either affiliates out there or affiliate managers of how their reviews should be structured to start ranking for ChatGPT and the like?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually found a really interesting framework similar to what I had mentioned. We've had a couple of opportunities to work with really large brands that have had kind of the same question as the one I had in the example of what are the sites that are really informing ChatGPT's opinions, that are really informing how we're talked about online? And essentially, what we've done is we took all of these URLs, all these different individual citations, thousands and thousands of them, and we essentially ran them back through and we said, what can you tell us about these specific sites? Why is it that of, let's say, if there's 10,000 reviews of an iPhone or 100,000 reviews of a PlayStation, why is it that these, let's say, 100 were chosen over anybody else? And what we've been able to do is essentially establish a framework for kind of affiliates and how their content can be structured that will be able to give them a better chance of being in that mix and not just being just a generic review that was just outside of the bubble. So it really comes down to a couple of different core factors. So the first is just how you're structuring your content. So in terms of even using like schema to say review and product, just something where you're just calling out that to LLMs when they're just looking through your code that this is something that's going to be a product review. This is going to be something that you're going to want to put in the context of a review when you're looking at this content. The second is really like the overall clarity of language.
Hmm.
So what we found is that if you write a review and you say, this works great, or this works well, or this worked okay, or this worked poorly, it doesn't necessarily tell LLMs anything because you're not saying what worked great, what didn't work great, what works poorly. It might be something that maybe you talk about a little further up in maybe an article or a section, but really, the more that you can be specific, that when you're saying, this worked great because, this worked poorly because, this worked okay because, the more that you can contextualize any conclusions that your article's coming to, the better. So I would really try and just avoid just generic conclusions and really make sure that anything you're saying about a product or service's quality, that it's just really rooted in very detailed information. The reason for that is that unfortunately, one of the things about LLMs is that you can now create million page sites in minutes. So I can essentially pull, let's say, a top 100 product list on Amazon or Best Buy or any reseller and say, hey, I want to launch a review blog today. Feed in these 100 product names and say, write product reviews of this, throw it up on a website, put some affiliate code on there and hope that I'm able to get traction. And if your content is just in that same vein of just very generic, very lacking in clarity, you're just not really going to be able to stick out, especially with just the amount of just, I would say, content spam that's going to be popping up as a result of these kind of opportunities. The next is that you also want to make sure that you're giving a balanced review. So what we found was that reviews that were really praise heavy, that just said, this is the greatest product ever. This satisfies all of my needs and then some. I could not ask for a better product or service. That what we found was that those reviews were far less likely to be selected as opposed to reviews that were balanced, reviews
Huh?
that said, this was great, but I felt that the battery life for this should be so much higher, whereas the batteries were drained in 3 hours and I had to charge and it was this whole thing. That reviews that are balanced, where you're talking about things that are really good about the product and things that you also don't necessarily, things that you necessarily didn't like, that those reviews were really good because it gives a lot of context to ChatGPT and other similar LLMs because you're putting into context specific characterizations of these different features that allow it to really make some deep and interesting conclusions. The other part of the framework is just comparative. So if you're writing a review and it's being written in isolation and you're just saying, and you're just saying, let's say, a review of a phone or a backpack or something like that, where you're not necessarily comparing it to other items, we found that reviews that were a little bit more comparative that would say, previously we reviewed this thing and we feel that this product is really good in these areas. This other thing, when you compare it for this use case, it's maybe not necessarily the best solution. We found that having some comparative content really helped as well because it establishes not only, I would say, just context, but also a little bit of authority in terms of this is a way of saying I'm an authority in this because I review products or services of this type frequently. And so the content and kind of context around what I'm saying It definitely matters. The other thing as well is that if it's overly, I would say, promotional, I know I talked about this a little bit, but if it's overly, hey, guess what? Like, I was asked to review this by this brand and I'm so happy to do it because I love their products and I think they're great, that essentially, obviously we would need to, as affiliates, if we're doing anything like that, we certainly have to flag that it's not, that it's a sponsored piece of content. But doing so in a way that was just overly over the top, like, oh, I'm just so excited that I get to review this product. This is so great. I love this brand. What we found was that those pieces of content didn't necessarily have a high uptake in terms of being a citation source. That really what kind of ChatGPT and these other sources are looking for, just these very like down to earth, specific, balanced, clarity
Yeah.
kind of reviews that really can give an overall complete picture of the product. And the final note, taking all of this back to the earlier part of the discussion, was that we talked about attributes and we talked about if ChatGPT is being asked, what's the best this, what's the best that, whether it's a product or service, that essentially you want to try and understand what are the attributes that ChatGPT is going to grade a product or service on. And then how can I go back and make sure that my reviews are touching on these areas? That if I'm writing a review of a product, that I'm going through these 7 or 8 key factors and I'm going through them in depth and I'm going through them with good context, knowledge, and kind of a fair and balanced approach, that if you start to produce content like that, even if you are a small site, even if you're, let's say, somebody that's been doing this for a month, or maybe somebody that's been doing it for a year, and maybe you just haven't had a lot of traction, maybe organically you're just stuck and there's just all these just websites that just far outrank you, that if you do have quality content, if you really truly are generating content that speaks specifically to the points that LLMs feel is important, then your chances of being able to stand out in a review ecosystem where you might have tens of thousands of reviews out there, your chances of being able to stand out and generate traffic are going to be significantly higher.
Yeah, and I think that aligns really well with the way I do searches for products. If I'm on Amazon, I'm looking at all the 1-star reviews
Mhm.
and seeing if, first off, I can eyeball if they're real or not or paid. And then if there's repeat issues that product is having, I'm not going to buy it. But if the reviews are something about customer support or nefarious, it doesn't matter. I'm going to understand that. And it is great that this is learning with those kinds of negative reviews as well. Really good tips here, Will. We're running out of time and I wish we could talk more on this, but tell us anything you want to finish with here, like in terms of like influencers, maybe. I think that was my last question. Can influencers rank for LLMs as well as content sites?
Absolutely. So if you're an influencer, and let's say that writing copy isn't necessarily part of your kit, that let's say you're doing more YouTube videos, like YouTube product reviews and just video
Yeah.
related content, that stuff gets picked up really well. What we found specifically when we were looking at this, the phone manufacturer in this example, a lot of what ChatGPT was drawing conclusions from were people literally saying, here's a day in the life of me using this product. Here's me putting it in some water or dropping it or doing this, that, or the other. But ChatGPT was able to actually take the content from that video and those specific timestamps and be able to cite it within the results. So even if you're somebody that is looking at this and you're like, I don't write reviews, I don't write content, but you do, let's say, more on the video side, you can absolutely rank well and be cited. Again, just going back to this kind of framework of just good, fair, balanced, specific content that LLMs really like to see.
Okay, awesome. And what I'm gathering here today is utilizing and leveraging affiliates to fill in the gaps that you're missing as a product or brand is a great strategy, and they're going to start ranking on LLMs. It's a growing community and leveraging for everybody's search. It's something everybody should be thinking about in a strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah. Just will it rankview.ai or yeah, follow me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Hey,
Good to
thanks
see
so
you.
much, Dustin.
And for those listeners out there, keep on